Hi, and welcome to my presentation on how we achieve financial independence. By we, of course, I mean me, your host, Ted Carr, and my wife, Claire Carr. I'm really happy that you could take some time out of your day to join me for this presentation. Here's what I'm going to be covering. I'm going to open up with a couple of brief announcements and then talk about the purpose, in other words, what's in it for you, hopefully, how we achieved financial independence from the non-financial perspective as well as a financial perspective. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the timing, how long it took to do it, just again for some more context. And then we'll take a minute or two and wrap things up. So let's get going. So as far as the announcements go, you may notice that there's a new look to the videos, and that's because I've switched from OBS to Flashback Express for my video recording. And Flashback Express does not have a built-in webcam, so I have to rely on the Windows 10 native camera, which now appears at the bottom of the presentation. And for editing, just FYI, I still use OpenShot for my video editing. I'd like to invite you, if you haven't already done so, to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, which you can do so from the latertofire.com homepage. Just wait for a pop-up to appear and fill in your first name and your email address. As for the purpose of the presentation, this is a story about how we achieve financial independence. And stories, I think, are really impactful because they present opportunities for us to learn from one another. We hope that you'll find things within our story that inform you and inspire you that are relatable. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to communicate to us from the comment form on the latertofire.com homepage. And I think it's important to point out, at least one of our purposes is to show that achieving financial independence is within reach for regular people just like us. And we believe it's never too late to start the journey to financial independence. And you'll see from our story a little bit that I was a little bit of a late starter myself. And I want to point out that this is not prescriptive in any way. You have your own unique set of circumstances. And as I said, take what you like and leave the rest behind. And when it comes to making financial decisions, always consult with your financial advisor. So a little bit more about us. When it comes to work, we're both white-collar workers. I worked in IT, manufacturing, customer service, did a lot of internal consulting for high-tech firms in Silicon Valley. And Claire always worked in accounting and finance, again, in a variety of firms in California, in the Bay Area. Education-wise, I got an MBA from the University of Houston when I was 30 years old. Prior to that, I was working for Social Security in Houston. So I really didn't start my journey to financial independence until I got into the business world. Thanks to UH, I was able to do so. Claire also has a master's, and I believe hers is in accounting. When it comes to money management, Claire and I were kind of cut from the same cloth. We were not prodigious spenders. We were conservative. We believed in living below your means. We were savers. We communicated very well when it comes to money management. She kept her own checking account, savings, and investment accounts, and I kept my own checking, savings, and investments accounts. But we always communicated when it came to decisions, regardless of whether it was spending or a joint purchase or investing decisions. We always communicated and we always transparent. And that's just the way we preferred to set up our money management, and it's worked for over 25 years, so apparently it's not broke. And lifestyle. We were not big spenders. We didn't buy the most expensive car. We bought affordable cars and drove them for 7 to 10 years. Thanks to Claire, we don't have an RV, we don't have a kayak, we don't have a sailboat. We don't have a lot of the things that are second home that I was like gung-ho to do. So she would reel me in if I started to get enamored with something that sounded good. And so because of that, we don't have a lot of expenses on things. If we wanted an experience, we went out and rented it. We've been on an ATV, we've been on a jet ski, we go to all kinds of places and stay without having to go there year after year. So we believe in experiences, and we believe you can rent rather than buy, and it's a lot cheaper, I think, in the long run to do it that way. So we have a fun lifestyle, but again, I think it's one that is, again, living below your means and being conservative when it comes to your spending and focus more on saving and investing. I hope that helps. Non-financial factors that led to us achieving financial independence. I think the non-financial factors are really important. They set the table for following and working the practices of achieving financial independence from a financial perspective. But this, I think, is really critical. Having a frugal mindset, which means living below your means. And that's just something I think came about because of the way we were brought up. Claire's parents were very frugal. They were savers. I was frugal by necessity. We didn't have money, so I came from a slightly different background than Claire. We converged because of our frugal experiences, and we lived below our means, which opened the door for us to become savers and investors. And I think another big one, especially as it relates to being good savers, is we are both the kind of people that could practice delayed gratification. You know, the kids where, oh, you can have one marshmallow now, but if you wait 15 minutes, you can have two. We would wait the 15 minutes. So by practicing delayed gratification, we were able to focus on longer term goals, and i.e. the savings to help us get to those longer term goals. So I think that was just something that just worked out for both of us. We were the kind of people who were able to see the value in being willing to wait and work towards achieving a goal. Speaking of which, we were goal-oriented. I was perhaps more goal-oriented than Claire because I really believed in writing down goals. And there's neuroscience actually behind that practice that says if you write down your goals, you're much more likely to achieve them. So early on, I established a habit of writing down my goals. And if I write down a goal, I get it done. And I think there's just tremendous power in writing a goal. It's making a commitment to yourself. It helps you figure out how to get to point A to point B. And I just think it's one of those things that's very powerful. It's been very impactful in my life. It's something I still do today and highly recommend. Communications and transparency. So we kept our money separate. So in order for that to work, you have to communicate and you have to be transparent. And we were very communicative when it comes to managing our money. Adopting a business model framework. So this is kind of a nuanced one, but because we both were in the business world together, we had a framework to talk about our personal finances on, or model our personal finances, which would be having an operating budget. So every year we would have our 12-month budget, and having a long-term plan, because the companies we worked for had long-term plans. So we adopted that structure of a budget and a longer-term plan, which fed into how are we going to save this year and how are we going to feed that into our longer-term plan. And we would, of course, communicate. We wouldn't necessarily hold formal meetings, but we would communicate on these topics all the time. So we kind of looked at ourselves as, our business, and Claire, of course, was the CEO and I was the president, and we had a little bit of fun with it, but it gave us that framework. I think that's the key, is having a framework to manage your money and have these important conversations about. Next is when it comes to pursuing financial independence, having a reason is really important, because otherwise, why are you doing it? So for Claire, her why of FI had to do with early retirement. She always equated financial independence with early retirement. For me, it took me a little longer to get my head wrapped around what financial independence could mean for me. And it really, the light bulb went off when I saw some of our friends' plans derailed over unexpected health consequences or issues. And I thought to myself, I'm doing really well. Why do I want to continue giving my time to a company as opposed to enjoying life myself? So Claire and I both had our whys of FI, albeit in different inspirations. So let's take a look at financial factors. The first was that we examined and tracked our financial health on a regular basis. And again, that kind of gets into the whole modeling ourselves after a corporation. We tracked our net worth monthly. We tracked our expenses constantly. We compared our actual expenses with our budgets, and we created a detailed retirement plan. So I think the obvious analogy is your own personal health, which requires you to get periodic checkups and tests so that you can get a diagnosis and make any changes you need to make improvements or achieve goals. So tracking and examining your financial health, I think, are absolutely critical steps from a financial standpoint. You really need to understand where you're at financially. Next is control spending. You can't be a good saver, you can't be a good investor if you're spending too much. And I know a lot of people don't like budgeting. Again, from our business backgrounds, budgeting was something that we saw the necessity of doing and also enjoyed doing. So I just encourage you, in whatever format or way that works for you, is to have a budget and use it however it works for you. Do we make every decision based on our budget constraints? No, but we put the budget out there because it helps set expectations and allows us to know how we're going to be spending and how our spending is changing over time. And we do that also by comparing our actuals to our spending, to our budget. So again, you're looking for variances, and that's just all very good information to help manage how we're making decisions and making sure that our spending is aligning with our values and we're not getting out of whack in terms of any one category versus another. So those are a couple practices that we follow, and I think they're just really kind of bedrock for how we go about managing our financial affairs. Avoiding debt. So these were a couple of things we did early on that I think paid off in the long run, which was we saved for purchases. So when it came to getting the mortgage on our house, we saved for the down payment, of course, and we didn't buy a house that was maximizing our potential based on our combined incomes. We bought a house that was more aligned with just one income. And that's being very conservative. So just buying enough house was a really good decision for us. It allowed us to manage our mortgage better, I think, and be a better saver. We refied at least once, and we got to the point where we could actually make multiple payments to drive down the total interest that we would pay on our mortgage. So that was one big decision that really helped us in terms of avoiding debt. We didn't accumulate bad debt. And by that, I mean credit card debt. Now, you can probably hear the F-35s going by. They do this quite often. People say it's the sound of freedom. Okay, great, but they are active. Back to we didn't accumulate credit card debt. We each had one credit card, and we only purchased what we could pay off the next month. We didn't carry a revolving credit card balance because the interest rates on that is just really, really extreme. So credit cards have their place for sure, but I think it's really important to keep the amount of money that you're paying interest on a credit card as close to zero at all possible, because that's a recipe for for never getting ahead. Next, maximize savings, and I took advantage of every benefit accorded to me: health savings accounts, 401k, IRA. And when I had the chance to make catch-up contributions, I made every catch-up contribution I could. So whatever savings opportunities are available to you, I encourage you to maximize them to the greatest extent possible, because that's just a way to, again, automate your savings, which is a way of saying paying yourself first. So this was one that I think is really important in terms of getting to financial independence, is saving as much as you can. And in the FAR community, people are talking about 20% not being enough, 50% or more in order to achieve financial independence in an accelerated manner, which is applicable to people who start late. Invest efficiently. By that, I simply mean keep your taxes and investment fees low. And so that means also putting investments that fit the tax status of account. For example, I kept my tax-free bonds, municipal bonds, government bonds, and my taxable brokerage account, because they're throwing off interest, but that interest wasn't taxable. I tried to put more equities into my tax-deferred accounts because they're growing capital gains, but they wouldn't be taxed until I start to withdraw the money. Now, you can't do that 100% because in Claire's case, she put more of her money into her taxable account and invested in stocks. So she was getting taxed more than I was, but she wanted that money to bridge to retirement because she always planned on retiring early. So it's again, depends on your circumstances. It's just sort of the general rule is investing efficiently just means keeping your taxes and your investment fees low. And when it comes to fees, I favored index funds and now ETFs because of their low fees. I'd rather not give the investment managers money to manage my money for me. There's a lot of simple strategies that do quite well, and ETFs are one path to helping you achieve your goals of making sure you're invested enough into equities without giving too much money away to money managers. So, timing. I worked for Social Security in my 20s, and I really didn't save for retirement during those years. I was I was enjoying my newfound independence, and I was spending. I wasn't making a lot of money. In fact, the money that I had saved working for the government is what I used to go back to school and get my MBA. And after I got my MBA, I then went to work in the business world, and that's when I started to realize that there's another way of looking at savings, and that was for a longer term. So I really didn't start until I was, 30 something on focusing for retirement. And that was before the FIRE movement began in 2010. So I calculate, if I kind of work back, that I probably achieved, I'll say we achieved financial independence when I was in my mid 40s. So probably within 15 years, we achieved financial independence. But again, it wasn't done with FIRE being consciously in our thoughts. So I kept on working because I have this worker's personality, and I really didn't put it all together until later. And Claire was really the driver behind us retiring early, because that was the way she was wired. I might still be working if it wasn't for her. So anyhow, that gives you a sense of our timing with regards to how long it took us to achieve financial independence. And really, the takeaway there is you can start late and still achieve financial independence in an accelerated manner and retire earlier. And that's what we did. All right, going to take a minute or two just to wrap things up. So I hope you enjoyed that overview of our story. And again, I hope you see that it's indicative that regular people like Claire and I can achieve financial independence, and hopefully inspires other people to see that it can be done as well. It's not just for a certain preconceived notion of who FIRE applies to. And keep in mind the importance of the non-financial factors, because they work together. And I think the non-financial factors are the ones that beget the good behaviors, the good habits when it comes to the financial side. So take a look at the non-financial factors that matter to you, and make sure that they support those practices, the financial practices of achieving FI. FIRE is about designing your life. And I think what's great about the FIRE movement, and I wish I'd known this earlier, is that you spend according to your values. And it's something that I think could give you great joy and satisfaction if you identify your values and look at how you're spending to achieve your values, to support your values, to invest accordingly, and knowing that it's not about sacrifice and deprivation. It's about choosing to live the way you want to, that what matters to you, and not what outside forces are trying to convince you to do and how to spend, right? So I think that's kind of one of the great things about this. And even if you start late, you can still look at structuring your finances, your spending, your saving around your values. And you can get by with a lot less stuff, for example. That's something I'm really big on, is living with less. And it actually gives you more satisfaction, more purpose. And I think that's just really important, just to understand that this is all about designing your life and finding purpose and happiness, and that choosing to have the time for the freedom to live life the way you want to. And just wanted to say, please take a minute to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our newsletter, and our podcast. Our podcast is available on iTunes and many other podcast apps. And finally, again, thank you for staying with me through this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, this is Ted Carr wishing you all the best. Take care. Stay safe. Bye now.